The galaxy was vast, sprawling across millions of light years, but it had one unifying heartbeat: the rule of Queen Soliara of the Anrian system. Her reign had brought decades of peace among the warring star clusters, and her daughters, twin heirs, Lysera and Valen, were beloved across the cosmos. But then, without warning, the unthinkable happened. The princesses vanished. Panic rippled through every planet, every moon, every starport. Ships were recalled, fleets mobilized, and the Interstellar Council convened emergency sessions that lasted weeks. The galaxy's collective pulse quickened with fear. What power could snatch both daughters in the same night? And more importantly, what would become of the fragile balance the Queen had maintained? Amid the chaos, on a small, largely ignored planet called Arinder, a human named Kale Draven stirred from his sleep. Kale was not a soldier, not a diplomat, not a spy. He was a salvage engineer. His days were filled with repairing old ships, retrieving lost cargo, and navigating the occasional asteroid storm. He had little care for politics, and even less for intergalactic royals. But fate, as it often does, had a strange sense of irony. Kale's morning began as any other, with the screech of pneumatic doors and the hiss of coolant systems. But as he stepped outside his workshop, he found a small, battered vessel lodged in the rocks. The ship was alien, with sleek curves unlike any he had seen in the outer rims. And inside, unconscious but breathing, were two beings, humanoid, yet clearly not human. At first glance, he assumed smugglers or runaway nobles. But when the vessel's identification panel blinked to life, it displayed a name that made Kale freeze: Lysera and Valen and Ryan. Kale had accidentally found the missing princesses. The princesses were in bad shape. Their clothes were torn, their communicators fried, and they were clearly frightened. Kale's heart raced, not with fear, but with disbelief. How could he, a simple human salvage engineer, have stumbled upon the most significant event in the galaxy's recent history? Lysera stirred first, blinking her luminescent violet eyes. "Where are we?" she whispered. Valen, whose hair shimmered with silver strands reflecting the morning sun, looked around the rocky landscape with suspicion. We were taken," she said, her voice trembling. And they knew you would find us." Kale's brows knitted. "Who would know that? How did you even get here?" There was a pause. The princesses exchanged glances, an unspoken understanding. Finally, Lysera spoke. "The Syndicate, a rogue faction that has been trying to overthrow our mother's rule. They wanted to use us as leverage. But something went wrong, and we escaped. Only, the ship's navigation was damaged. We had no idea where we were going. Until now." Kale, gripping the side of the alien vessel, realized the gravity of his discovery. He had stumbled into a plot that could ignite war across the galaxy. And yet the princesses needed help. The journey back to safety was perilous. Kale's ship was old, but it had charm and reliability, a human-made machine built to endure abuse. He helped Lysera and Valen aboard, stabilized the vessel, and plotted a course to the nearest Interstellar Council outpost. Along the way, the princesses revealed more of the Syndicate's plans: assassination attempts, espionage, and a network of spies planted in every major system. The galaxy wasn't just panicking over their disappearance, it was teetering on the brink of civil war. "What's worse," Valen added as Kale worked the controls, "is that they've made it look like we betrayed our own people. If we return without evidence, the Council might blame us for the attacks they orchestrated." Kale's jaw tightened. He had no diplomatic training, no knowledge of galactic politics, but one thing humans excelled at, he realized, was stubborn courage. "Then we'll need proof," he said. "And I know just where to find it." They turned the ship toward Zithera, a planet abandoned by most galactic powers, rumored to house syndicate outposts. As they approached, Kale noticed the surface glimmering with hidden technology, cloaked sensors, and defensive turrets designed to detect any unauthorized craft. But Kale had salvaged and repaired enough ships to know one thing: every system has a flaw. Using his engineering expertise, he guided the ship through the cloaked barriers, evading detection. The Syndicate's base was a fortress, half buried in crystalline mountains, but there was one entrance overlooked, a ventilation shaft designed to prevent heat buildup in the base's energy cores. It was slim, claustrophobic, and highly dangerous, but it was their only option. Inside the base, Kale, Lysera, and Valen moved like shadows. They bypassed surveillance, disabled guards quietly, and finally reached the central command chamber. Screens flickered with holographic projections, maps of the galaxy, fleet movements, and most damning of all, intercepted communications showing syndicate leaders plotting attacks and framing the royal family. Valen's hands trembled as she pulled the data module. This is everything. This will clear our names and expose the syndicate. But just as they were about to leave, alarms blared. Red lights washed the chamber. Guards flooded in. Kale felt a surge of adrenaline. The odds were against them, but he also knew humans had a reputation for improbable escapes. He improvised, using the base's own energy conduits to create electrical discharges, knocking out guards long enough for the group to escape. The chase was brutal. They navigated twisting corridors, dodging automated defense drones, until finally reaching Kale's ship. The princesses, though exhausted, moved with purpose. They weren't victims. They were heirs to a throne, fighters in their own right. As they took off, the syndicate's leader, A.S. Shadowy figure named Vorkin, appeared on the main screen, his voice distorted. "You cannot escape, Andrians. You and the human will die in the void."
Kale smirked.
Funny, humans have a way of surviving. And survive they did. Kale piloted the ship through asteroid fields, past patrols, and into uncharted hyperspace. When they arrived at the Interstellar Council, the module containing the Syndicate's secrets was presented. Shocked gasps filled the chamber. Every council member could see the plot laid bare. The Syndicate had orchestrated attacks, spread false rumors, and even bribed some of the galaxy's most influential leaders. The revelation rocked the galaxy. Peaceful planets celebrated the end of the Syndicate's reign, and warrior systems called for immediate justice. And through it all, one simple fact remained undeniable. A human had uncovered the truth. Queen Soliara, upon receiving her daughters safely, embraced them in the royal palace orbiting Andrea Prime. Tears shone in her eyes as she looked at Kale, still covered in grime from his journey. You saved my daughters," she said softly. "And the galaxy itself. We are in your debt, Kale Draven." Kale, never one for ceremonies, only shrugged. "I just did what I thought was right," he replied. But the galaxy didn't see it as simple right and wrong. Humans were known for resilience, for unpredictability, for ingenuity, and now for heroism on a galactic scale. Kale's story spread across the stars, inspiring hope and challenging assumptions. In the following weeks, the Syndicate was dismantled. Leaders were captured, systems liberated, and the Interstellar Council implemented reforms to prevent such a threat from ever rising again. Lysera and Valen took up their roles as heirs, now wiser and more prepared for the weight of the crown. And Kale returned to Arinder, to his workshop and his salvaging, but he did so with a quiet pride. He had changed the course of history, even if the galaxy would never fully understand a human's perspective. One evening, as he repaired a rusted freighter on the outskirts of Arinder, Kale looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Lysera and Valen were guiding fleets, negotiating peace, and building a future their mother had dreamed of. And he, a simple human, had held the truth that saved them all. A new era had begun, not just for the Orion system, not just for the galaxy, but for humanity's place within it. Humans had proven, once and for all, that even in a universe of advanced civilizations, courage, ingenuity, and heart could tip the balance of destiny. Kale smiled as he tightened the last bolt on the freighter. Perhaps one day, he'd leave Arinder, travel the stars, and see the galaxy beyond salvage yards and asteroid belts. But for now, he was content. He had lived through the chaos, witnessed courage firsthand, and realized that even the smallest actions could have monumental consequences. And somewhere, far across the void, the galaxy whispered Kale's name, human, hero, and the one who held the truth. As the weeks passed, the galaxy slowly regained its composure. The Syndicate's network had been dismantled, their leaders captured, and countless systems liberated from the chaos they had sown. Lysera and Valen, once terrified girls, now stood taller and wiser. They moved with the confidence of heirs who had faced real danger, their experiences shaping them into rulers the galaxy could trust. Queen Soliara, still orbiting Andrea Prime in her majestic palace ship, formally honored Kale Draven. She held a private ceremony away from the cameras, where the twin princesses joined her. Kale, she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion, you did more than save my daughters. You preserved the peace of the galaxy. No human before you has ever held such a place in our history. Kale felt the weight of her words but shrugged, as was his habit. I just did what I could. I didn't plan on being anyone's hero, he admitted. Lysera smiled, her violet eyes shimmering. Sometimes, the universe chooses its heroes, she said softly. Valen added, and sometimes, it chooses the most unexpected ones. For Kale, life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but nothing was quite the same. Arinder's small salvage yard seemed smaller now, a quiet reminder that even ordinary humans could change extraordinary things. Yet, he couldn't forget the events that had unfolded. The chase through the Syndicate's base, the near-death encounters, the look of fear and hope on the princesses' faces. Every moment had tested him, and he had survived. And not just survived, but triumphed. Months later, Kale received a message through an encrypted channel. It was Lysera and Valen, inviting him to visit Andrea Prime. They had crafted a small fleet to patrol and protect outlying systems, ensuring that no threat like the Syndicate could rise again. Kale was hesitant at first, preferring the solitude of Arinder, but something in their message stirred him, the promise of adventure and the opportunity to see the galaxy he had saved. When he finally arrived, the sight took his breath away. The twin princesses, now fully confident leaders, greeted him warmly. We've been keeping the galaxy safe, Valen said. And we couldn't have done it without you. Kale nodded, feeling a rare warmth of pride. I just fixed things, he said modestly. Lysera laughed softly, a sound that carried across the observation deck. You did more than fix things. You held the truth when no one else could. You showed us courage, ingenuity, and the heart of a human. Kale's eyes wandered to the stars beyond the palace windows. He thought of Arinder, of his humble workshop, and of the countless salvage missions that had taught him patience, problem-solving, and survival. In that moment, he realized something profound. Heroism wasn't about titles, fleets, or fancy ceremonies. It was about action, about facing danger with integrity, and about choosing to do the right thing even when the odds were impossible. As the galaxy celebrated its newfound peace, Kale finally allowed himself to look forward. There would be other challenges, other threats, other adventures, but now he knew he was ready. Humans had always been underestimated, but now, the universe itself had seen what they could do. Kale stood at the edge of the observation deck, the twin moons of Andrea Prime reflecting in his eyes. The galaxy is vast, he murmured to himself. But maybe it's not so scary after all. Lysera and Valen joined him silently, each placing a hand on his shoulder. Wherever you go, Kale, Lysera said, you will always have a place among us. And in that quiet, unspoken moment, Kale understood. He was no longer just a human salvage engineer. He was a guardian, a hero, and the one who held the truth that saved an entire galaxy. As he looked at the stars stretching infinitely into the void, Kale knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The universe was wide, mysterious, and dangerous, but it was also full of possibility. And wherever the next challenge lay, Kale Draven would face it, not as a pawn, not as a spectator, but as a force the galaxy could never forget.